From Unity of Houston, Texas, this is the Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational spiritual community providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress now with Reverend Howard Caesar.
You know, when we do that and we have the people kind of go around and shake a hand and say good morning and do that kind of greeting, there's some Christian one-liners that I've seen, and one of them says, you know, some people are kind, polite, and sweet-spirited until you sit in their pew, in their place there. And we're not like that at all. So it's okay wherever you sit. Nobody is, right? We don't have ownership of a seat here. But anyway, that happens various places, right? And anyway, it's kind of funny. So, you know, one of my favorite teachings in the Bible is found in a couple of the Gospels, and I like to actually pull it out of the Gospel of Matthew. And I like to do that because in Matthew it's found in the Sermon on the Mount, and I like to call it the sermon or the seminar on the Mount, because it's really a composite of Jesus' powerful teachings and truths all compacted together. And you can find, you know, if you have a red letter edition of the Bible and you go to Matthew 5, 6, and 7, the entire 3 chapters is all red. There's no break from beginning to end. So it's that presentation that Jesus did in all these different teachings and powerful truths. And toward the end, in chapter 7, verse 7, I believe it is this verse that I really relate to. And I relate to it a lot because also when I was confirmed in kind of the traditional church that I grew up in, I was in the 8th grade, and when you're confirmed, have confirmation, at our church they gave us like a certificate. And in the certificate they had a Bible verse that was kind of like your life verse. And everyone got their own verse. They were not the same. And so you drew to you a particular verse. And I always felt like, wow, this was really powerful, the verse that I drew to me. I have many Bible verses I love, but this one is one that's dear to my heart because of these many reasons. It's familiar to you, and it's very important that you put it close to you as well, and maybe you already do. But the verse is, ask and it will be given unto you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it will be opened unto you. For everyone that asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and he who knocks it shall be opened unto him. Very, very powerful verse, and it's really about relationship. You know, that wherever you go in this life, you're in a relationship with the divine, and therefore you have to communicate. And so the Spirit wants you to ask, wants you to be in communication, wants you to seek out that presence and power, wants you to knock at the door of understanding or help or strength or whatever it is you might need. It's very important to ask, to seek, to knock on an ongoing basis during the course of your journey through this life. God wants that. And so I believe in miracles. I believe in miracles. How many of you here believe in miracles? Okay. How many of you have had miracles happen in your life? We all should be raising our hands, really, because we all have. And some of them you may not have noticed, but they have gone on. I believe in miracles large and small, and I've witnessed them in my life many times over, and I've witnessed them in other people's lives, and people have told me about them, of course. I just returned, as I shared, from John of God in Amazônia, Brazil, and outside of Brasilia, and his healing work there. And you could not go there and see and experience what happens there and not believe in the miraculous ways in which the divine is able to move through and as people. Just miraculous things beyond words to express and explain, but it happens, and it's a treasure to go there and be in that vortex of energy in which God is moving in such a powerful way. Thousands of people coming. I would like to share, are entitled to miracles. Do you get that? We are entitled to miracles because of what you and I are. And what you and I are children of God, okay? And we are children of a God in whom all things are possible. You need to get that. and really get that there are miracles happening and you can open to them. We will receive miracles in our life because of what God is, okay? And God is love and life and divine intelligence and goodness. And miracles are guaranteed, okay? They're guaranteed by the laws of life and the laws of God, okay? In other words, a law is a law, a principle is a principle. If you apply that principle, you apply that law, and really miracles are really the demonstration of laws and principles that are universal, as well as moments of time where grace moves in beyond your knowing and things happen and come together. And some of that is because you believe in the power of grace to move and to help and to assist, okay? And so it's important to know that they're guaranteed in the sense that you shall know the truth, and then the truth shall set you free. If you know that truth, and the truth that there are miracles and that there are spiritual laws in every area and sector of your life, that you can be helped, and you hold to that, and you know that, and you have conviction about that, things can happen. Things can happen. If you can move beyond your limiting beliefs, your fears, your doubts, it's very important, of course. And so you have had affirmed, like I have had affirmed by Jesus, that the kingdom of God is within you. And therefore, that means God is within you. Okay? God is within you now, okay? That your true identity always is one with God. And that all the life and all the power and all that God is there, accessible to you. It's not like I have to go somewhere. I simply have to open to it. And that's the journey of life. And that's what we're here to learn, really. Is to really open our mind, open our heart, draw in, invoke, invite, experience. And life is an experience of God, not just intellectualizing concepts. And so that's the shift that we have to make many times. And so God is love, and because God is love, God wants to help us at all times and in all ways to unite with us. And so therefore, you must know for yourself and tell yourself that you are entitled to miracles in this life. Now, just check inside when I say that. Oh, not me. Oh, they're hard to come by. Oh, you don't know what's happened to me. Whatever. Just notice what goes on in your mind as you deal with the importance of telling yourself and identifying with and knowing you are entitled to miracles. And so we're talking not about necessarily just entitlement. There are lessons and principles to apply and lessons to learn, of course, and a consciousness to be built that opens to that dynamic and these things happening with some consistency. And sometimes it's understanding that we don't always get what we want, we get what we need. Because the universe and the divine intelligence knows what we need in order to grow and have lessons to be learned. And that's what we're here for in this physical form. And so sometimes what we want and are asking for doesn't match up with what we need at that time in our unfoldment. But God is not limited to space and time, but we are. Basically, God can deliver a miracle in a heartbeat, in a moment. But we as humans typically can't, because we as humans need time to open, to apply the principles and the laws. And so it may take for us hours, days, months, even years. It can take time, because basically what we're doing is trying to establish a vibrational match. So if this is what we're really trying to achieve, and our vibrations are down here in terms of not believing, being in fear, having doubt, what have you, and we're wanting this, until we create a vibrational match, we're not going to have that be our experience. And that's just part of life, is to get back on the vibrational match of knowing what is the conviction of truth to be about God and the power of God's love and the power of God's help. Now, on the internet this week, some of you may have seen on MSN, the homepage, there was a piece that really shared some information, and the title of it was called "The True Measure of a Person's Success." the true measure of a person's success. And it had enlisted 4 necessary virtues to be successful in life. And I kind of read that and found it interesting, and they made the point that in order to get anything truly worthwhile and truly meaningful for yourself and others, it requires that you stick to it, stick to something longer than you may think you have to going in. Because for long-term goals and certain goals and things that you're trying to achieve, it requires a combination of passion, and perseverance. And so they called that grit, and sticking with things and not giving up too soon. And they listed 4 things and qualities of grit. You want to hear what they are? You sure? That was kind of weak. You want to hear what they are? All right. I want the energy, the passion. Okay. So anyway, the first thing, quality for this grit is to have a tremendously deep interest. And it's people who say, I love what I do. I love what I do. I have this interest in it. And the second thing is a capacity to practice. In other words, you have to strive every day. And this kind of a person will say, you know, I strive every day to get better. Every day. And it's important to me. And so we're talking about not only something you want to realize, manifest in your life, but it's consciousness. It's what your prayer life. It's what your relationship is with God. Every day I'm holding this vision. I'm knowing this truth. That kind of thing. So you can apply it to anything. And the third thing of grit is purpose. And it's a sense that not only is it interesting to you, and not only is it important to you, but it's important actually to other people. In other words, what it is that you are involved in and pursuing will have its benefits not to just you alone. Okay? And so there's some purpose in it, even if it's something you're evolving in consciousness to a more loving person, a more joyful person, a more up person, whatever. That's going to have its benefits to the people you live with, work with, all of that. To the collective consciousness of humanity, that goes into that soup. It's something of purpose. The fourth thing for grit is hope. It is the ability to get up again when you've been knocked down. Okay? It is a resilience. It is the deep confidence that although the world isn't perfect, and although you yourself are not yet perfect, that there still are things that you can do to make things a little bit better. There's always something you can do to make things a little bit better, no matter what. So grit basically starts with passion. But if you don't find what you do interesting, and you don't love what you do, and if you don't find it important, they make the point that there's no point in perseverance. That basically it's not passion without perseverance, it's not perseverance without passion, it's both passion and perseverance. Okay? So we have to continue down that road and not give up. And that's the point I wanted to make. You know, sometimes a miracle doesn't magically happen overnight. It requires the passion and the perseverance to be sustained within our consciousness. And sometimes God is working on our behalf and moving us there, and then we give up too soon. And we allow the fears to take over, we allow the doubts to take over, we allow the limiting beliefs, we stop visualizing and believing, we stop building that body of faith. And when if we had stayed with it and had the grit and the passion and the perseverance to keep going, results would have been different. I recall an example in my life, and it's a similar example to, I think, what stories many people have had, and it is having to do with, you know, a residence that we maybe wanted to have our dream home or residence, and we kind of had a sense of what it was, and there was a series of ways in which we were led to being able to have it and have it materialize when maybe there were a lot of obstacles. Anyway, for me, this little story has to do with a home that we found, and I had 7 years of ministry in Olympia, Washington, and we were able to go from a duplex to a small little house to a nice house during that 7 years. And then we saved our pennies and we got a little old house for a rental property. And so when I moved here, you know, I sold all that and bought bought a home and invested in real estate, and that was in 1983. And if those of you who were living here in '84, it was kind of a crash of the whole oil in Houston, went into recession. So I really lost everything and was starting over about 5 years later when I kind of let go of that stuff. And so we were saving our pennies again, and we wanted to move from the house that we were in. And we didn't have a very large backyard, and we felt kind of closed in, and the house was somewhat cramped. So we were wanting to get a larger home and have a yard that was more expanse. So went to a development and a builder and visited, and they had this board there, and you went in and you looked and you saw certain streets, and they had the size of the, the streets and the size of the lots. And those that were taken had a red tack on, so you weren't supposed to look at a red tack lot. And then they had those that were still open, available, had a green tack. And so somehow I went right to this lot that was a big lot, one of the 3 biggest, and it backed up. The backyard was on a golf course. And these were track homes, but this was a development there. And so I said to the salesman, I would really like that lot. He said, it's got a red tack on it. I said, well, a red tack has never stopped me before. And so I couldn't get away from it. He tried to lead me to other green tacks, and I kept coming back to this one. So we left this place, and my wife and I drove to this street and went out and stepped out onto the property, and we really fell in love with it because it was large and spacious, and it was actually about 6 feet above in elevation above the golf course. So at the end of the property, your yard, it dropped down and so you're sitting up high. I mean, you were like on a mountain in Houston. It was really something. It was like, God, this is for me. And so anyway, it also was overlooking 3 fairways, a par 4, a par 3, which had water, a body of water, and then another par 4. So it was a big expanse way out before you could see houses way across. I loved it, fell in love with it, had to have it. And so my wife and I, for whatever reason, we would go out there just about once a week for about 5 or 6 weeks. I don't know, we didn't know. We weren't trying, we weren't trying to steal it from anyone. But I would go back to the salesman and I'd say, they haven't turned that back in yet, have they? No. Well, anyway, eventually I learned that there was an easement problem, and they weren't building on that lot because the easement problem had to be solved. And they were working on that, I guess, legally. And so my wife was in the grocery store, and a lady came up to her and she said, you don't know me, but I've seen you out on this empty lot across from our house. And she says, what you don't know is I know the guy who has the money down on that property. And in knowing them, we've been told that they're going to turn that lot back in because they need to build a new home and they're going elsewhere. So I guess that you guys are interested. You're always out there. And so anyway, I went back to the salesman who I'd seen several times, and I said, here's a check, a deposit for that lot and that building. Well, he thought I was delusional. It's like I'd been back there. I told you there's a red tack on it, And I said, no, he's going to turn it back in. He still thought I was nuts. And so he hadn't come yet. So I gave him the check. I convinced him to keep the check for the deposit because I didn't want it to get away to anyone else by any other salesman. He took it. 2 days later, they came in and gave back the lot. Yeah. Awesome. So we decided to sell our home. We put it up for sale. We sold our home, but the easement problem hadn't been solved. So we had to go rent another home and move into a house with the family. And a year went by. It wasn't solved. A year and a half went by, it wasn't solved. 2 years went by, it hadn't been solved. 2+ years, and we got a call. And they weren't giving us any information up to that time, that it was when it would be solved, if it would be solved. I was wondering whether I should give it back. I was wondering if the value of that property had to be going up over that period of time. Maybe they wanted us to back out, we were waiting us out. All those things went through my mind, but I kept getting no. Stay with it, stay with it. This is meant to be yours. So finally, they were going to start building. They had resolved the easement problem. And so we were told that they had made improvements on the house. and changed some of the stuff around, and the cost of the value of the house had gone up $30,000. Yet the builder, because we had that deposit, was honoring the price 2+ years earlier. So the moment we moved in, yeah. And not only that, you know, we had, back when we lived in Wisconsin, my wife and I, when we were married, we had put a little bit of money down on a business that was starting, and so we had a lot of stock because it was a startup company, and it had come back to us. At that time, they had sold the company, and so we realized that stock, it allowed us to have the money to put in a pool that we would not have been able to afford. So everything's timing, everything's working out. God has a plan when you don't know that there's a plan working. And so that's important to share. And I think you've had your stories as well on these kinds of things. And but the point is, you know, sometimes miracles take time. And our family has lived in that house for 13 years and then moved on from there to another home I've mentioned in the past. Don't need to get into that, but our children grew up in that. It was a wonderful space, and right on the golf course, my son went to Baylor on a golf scholarship as a result of all the golf that he got to play there. But we're entitled. We're entitled to miracles, and miracles can happen, and if we're willing to persist and persevere and believe that God is at work. Some of you study the Course in Miracles, I know, and I was given a set of the Course in Miracles back in 1978 by a congregant in my first ministry, and since that time I've been in and out of it. I've always studied it, but I pick it up and put it down, pick it up and put it down, and I love it. Every time I do, it feeds me. It's really the voice of the Holy Spirit. It's basically the source is the voice of Jesus Christ sharing his truth. And in the Course it says miracles are natural, and when they do not occur, something has gone wrong. Isn't that interesting take? That miracles occur naturally as expressions of love. So every time you express love, that is a miracle. You need to know that, because basically it's you being a vessel through which God is moving to express love, and when love connects and there's an exchange, that is a miracle. And everything that comes from love is a miracle, it says. All miracles mean life, and God is the giver of life, and his voice will direct you very specifically. This is from the Course. Miracles are a kind of exchange, as I just said, and it brings more love to both the giver and the receiver. And a miracle is a service. You know, miracles make minds one in God. Powerful. And each day should be devoted to miracles. Every day you get up, you should look at how can I be a vessel through which an expression of God, which is a miracle, can be done, because that will benefit in that exchange both me and the receiver, the recipient. So miracles are expressions of love. You know, yesterday I did a memorial service for a beautiful lady, and this lady actually was a spiritual teacher. In my estimation. Now, she was here in this congregation for 38 years. She didn't come through the line the last 10 or so. Beautiful, wonderful lady. She would, from some part of the lobby, say, "Hail Caesar." She had a wonderful sense of humor. And yesterday was the first day and probably the only day that I had her as a spiritual teacher. And maybe the day before, because I met with the family in a pre-memorial the day before and learned so much about her that moved me and touched me so deeply. And then in the memorial service that I conducted yesterday, the son, Jeremy, had put together all kinds of snapshots, but videos that had her speaking and talking. And she was a teacher of great wisdom. The whole family experienced that. She had married the one and only love of her life, and they had had 4 children. And when she gave birth to the 4th child in Florida, 2 weeks later, her husband unexpectedly died. And so she said, and this was teachings to her children, you can't ever get mad at God for any kind of loss. I took it as God must believe in me. In other words, God must believe in me to carry on with these 4 children on my own. And so I will rely on that God. And she did. And it was powerful, all her perspectives. She was an eternal optimist. She saw her life as bringing forth this kind of message of God and the relationship of God to her children and her grandchildren, and everyone she met knew her as just this light, and she was so much fun And she was, lighthearted and always made people laugh. And she said in one of the videos, it was like the side shot. So she was talking to somebody here, and this camera was there, and she said, listen to this is important to y'all. She said, when I was a little kid, she said, when visitors came to my parents' house, she said, I would do everything I could to make them laugh. She said, even if I had to dance and do the jig. She's 80-some years old saying this. And she said, and that was because I didn't want anyone ever to leave our house without being happy. So her whole life had that sense of purpose. That's a miracle maker. This lady was all about love, all about connecting and expressing love and bringing forth joy in powerful ways. And she said, she devoted herself to these teachings, how important it is to know God. The more you talk to God, the better your life will be. And the reason for life is to love God. She said her 4 daily steps to live by. And she said, the reason I've lived so long, she passed on at 91, but she said this somewhere in her late 80s. The reason I've lived so long, she's telling her grandchildren, everyone, is she says, I love life. That's the way she said it in the camera. I love life. There wasn't a day she got up that she wasn't going to be a positive impact on anyone. No one could ever remember her being down or, she'd always say, tomorrow will be a better day if something bad was going on for the grandkids or whatever. Always that kind of an influence. And so her 4 daily steps was thank God for another day and all its blessings and problems. Second is praise Him for the mighty power that He is beyond our comprehension. Third, acknowledge and recognize His presence. You are never alone, never, never. And fourth, we can never be separated from the love of God. A powerful lady that touched me, and they were all crying, and they weren't sad. They were in such joy and love from having experienced this woman in their life. They all went away after the service happy, but they were crying through the joyful, loving memories that had so impacted them as they watched this video. It was very powerful. It made me want to be like her. She was my teacher. She reminded me of how important miracles are as expressions of love and bringing forth joy and having a sense of purpose. And so let us all this day invite miracles into our life, to ask, to seek, to knock, and to decide to be givers of miracles through love. God bless you all.
When you visit Unity of Houston, you'll find a spiritual community, a church where you can connect and learn and grow with a progressive approach to Christianity. At Unity, we welcome you no matter what your beliefs. You'll find a teaching, loving, inspiring experience as we help each other be all we're created to be. Check us out. We'd love to have you. Find us online at unityhouston.org, and remember, life is meant to be good.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. Unity is inclusive, welcoming people of all walks of life in dignity and love. We believe that love, strength, and goodness dwells within you. May we all live in unity with God, humanity, and all of God's creation. And remember, as Reverend Caesar says, life is meant to be good.